Hey guys, good morning. So I wanted to make a quick video on some of my favorite picks for 2024 in terms of cook system. So there's some here that you may recognize. There are some classics here as well. So yeah, let's just go. So these are going to be my picks for backpacking primarily. I do have some other options that I initially was going to look into. That would also cover car camping, things like that, kayaking, canoe camping, long distance cycling. However, I think I'm going to focus today on backpacking stoves. So there are a few more options available. For example, I have a Jetboil Flash, and a couple of the other Trainias. But these are the ones I use primarily. So these are stoves that I've used within the last sort of 6 to 8 months. So we're going to be taking a look at those today. So I think if we start off on the left or your right, possibly, if we just move these over here. Got a few utensils and things here as well that I'm going to touch on. So the first stove I have here, that's not a good start, is a vintage piece. So this is one I picked up recently. I used it on my last trip to the Brecon Beacons just for like an overnight camp, test some gear, and sort of get an idea of how it works. So this is called the Epigas Alpine. So this is a pretty old stove. I think this is from the 80s, made in England. It was one of the first stoves to utilize the resealable gas cartridge. So Epigas, they pioneered the resealable gas cartridge. I think they were, if not the first, they were one of the first manufacturers to utilize that new technology. This is a very, very nice stove. It's not the lightest by any means. It weighs in about 400 grams, so it's a lot heavier than a lot of the stoves compared to sort of today's standards. It's all stainless steel. With solid brass components like the regulator here. It's, what do they call it, a satellite stove or something like that. So you've got this long connection here, so it means the gas cartridge is away from the burner, which I've never really used. I've used something similar with my Trania, with the gas adapter that has the same sort of idea. But I wanted a standalone stove, which was going to be a lighter alternative for use with a single pot, like this one. So this is the Epigas Alpine. This was specifically designed and tailored to be a high-performance stove that works better at higher altitudes, but also a lot better in colder temperatures, which I think was their primary focus. So they utilized a preheater, which of course now is pretty common standard for a lot of stoves, which basically preheats liquid gas or heats liquid gas, allowing you to burn or use the burner within sort of colder temperatures. Remote stove, I think that's what they're called. I think they're called remote stoves. But anyway, yeah. So this is it's fairly nice. It's got a very, very nice, wide but very stable platform. So you can put larger pots on there. I think one of the heaviest pots I do have is the Zebra pot, and that fits really, really nicely on there. So even with a larger pot like this, it can be used. And again, with a larger sort of mess kit, again, would work absolutely fine. And even something like the French Army mess tin, again, being a rectangular shape, it doesn't work on all stoves, but it will work quite nicely on this one. So yeah, it's just a really, really nice piece. One thing I do really like about it, instead of using the braided metal, I'm not sure what you call this, feed pipe, this has a rubber feed pipe, which has its pros, has its cons. I do like it because it's easily replaceable. So, you know, if you are trekking abroad, if you're in another country, it will be easier to maintain and repair this stove. If, for example, this has issues, this shouldn't really be a super hard thing to find. You know, you can pick these up in most camping shops, automotive dealerships, things like that. If need be, you know, anything will really work on this sort of thing. But it's super stable, all stainless steel, has a nice windshield around the burner. I think I'm probably the first person to actually review this stove on YouTube. So it's a very old style burner head with the preheater there, a windshield around the outside, which actually does work well. I've used this on my last trip and we had some fair winds, and it did work really, really nicely, super stable, and it does fold up pretty well. So it folds down to about the size of a lot of the modern style of this, like, you know, the MSR Spider and things like that. So yeah, really, really nice piece of kit, works super well, and I tend to use that in conjunction with this vintage pot. This has a little handle, and you would think this would be heavy. In fact, it weighs nearly the same as the Toaks 550 milliliter, which is really, really odd. You know, it's a vintage piece. It's a bit bigger, has a bigger capacity than the Toaks, again with a lid and a pot handle. But yeah, super nice piece of kit. Next we have something slightly different. This is the Trangia Mini, but this is the vintage version, so the only real difference as far as I can sort of tell is the lid. This is just an aluminium lid, whereas the new ones come with hard anodized lids, which are a blacky grey in colour. It's super simple kit. Just you get one pot, one lid, the burner, and the housing, which they do describe as a windshield, but I would say it's not a windshield. It doesn't really do an awful lot to protect the burner from the wind, in which you can bring one of these little titanium, or you can get an aluminium windshield to go with it. Really, really nice though. I use this a lot if I'm on a day hike and I want something just to make a quick brew. I don't know why I say quick brew, because this thing is not fast at all when you're comparing it to a gas stove, but it works nicely. You've got everything you need. You know, you've got everything you need for super simple meals. Especially if you're using boil in the bag, or actually, to be honest, freeze-dried food. Perfect. You know, if you're just boiling water, cooking basic meals, that's absolutely fine. I am aware there are certain Swedish YouTubers that make super beautiful gourmet meals on these things, and hats off to them. That is an incredible feat, to be honest. But yeah, really, really nice. These are relatively cheap. I think you can pick these up new for about £30. I paid that for the vintage one, which doesn't really make an awful lot of sense, apart from the fact I really like using vintage gear. So it was one of those things that I just had to have. Comes with a pot gripper, and everything just nests away quite neatly into this little pot. And it's actually a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be. You know, it is a pretty small piece compared with a spork, you know. So that's that one touched on. We'll just go over quickly a few utensils. So this is what I was using for the last sort of 10 years or so. It's a Light My Fire titanium spork. The issues I found with these, they tend to like poking holes in the side of your rucksack, or anything you have in your rucksack. So I have recently replaced that with the Tokes titanium long-handled spoon, which I do much prefer. I've never really utilized a knife or a fork, or, you know, when I'm eating in the field anyway. So the spoon does a really nice job, and it does keep your hands nice and clean when you're eating freeze-dried meals. And I will also take usually a Mora knife. So this is the 511 Basic. Really, really beautiful piece of kit. This was super cheap. I think it was £9.99. Really, really nice build quality for the price. Very, very comfortable handle, super sharp, straight out of the box. And I just use this for preparing food, and of course, if I need to use it in a survival scenario, then I can do. And it doesn't weigh an awful lot. It fits quite nicely in a bag. It's got a nice hard sheath to it, so this will tuck away nicely in a side pocket. One you are probably all familiar here is the BRS 3000T. So these stoves are, I would say, probably one of the most popular options for ultralight backpacking. Let's take a look at that. So these are super cheap. You can pick these up for next to nothing. I think I paid £15 for this one. They are just a generic stove. It's just that BRS are the most popular brand of these. Really, really nice ultralight titanium piece of gear. I mean, here's an idea of the bag size, you know, compared with the Epigas. You know, it fits into here. It's really, really small. However, they are super limiting. You know, I wouldn't want to be using a pot like this on here. I mean, although it does sort of work, it's not going to be the most stable of things. But, you know, it does the job, I guess. It's a very, very narrow pot support, but it is perfect for using in conjunction with smaller pots like the Tokes 550mm, and again, most of the Tokes series. The Tokes pots really, it just comes down to preference. I know the 750 is quite a popular size for these, but personally, I've never needed anything more than 500 milliliters, so I opted for the 500ml, which does the job perfectly, and I would highly recommend the Tokes pots. They're very, very well made, really, really lightweight, and very fairly priced. So using the titanium BRS and the Tokes pot in conjunction with one another is a perfect ultralight backpacking setup. So super easy to use. You just turn it on. They do have the nice, more modern style of extended adjuster here. So if you're wearing gloves, or, you know, it just makes it easier to adjust it without getting your fingers burnt, which I really, really do like. Super, super simple three pot support. Being titanium, it does dissipate heat really, really quickly. So the stove will cool down a lot faster than the Epigas, which is obviously stainless steel. One thing I haven't actually seen anybody talking about on YouTube, or as far as I know, are these pot supports. These are super cheap. These are like I think I paid 20, 30 pence for these on AliExpress, and they are just basically, you get 3 of these. Each have got a magnet in them. They do magnetize to your pot, and they just quite simply, they're a bit fiddly, but they do just click to your gas can, and it gives you a nice, very, very stable pot support. They weigh next to nothing. They pack down to next to nothing, and you know, they're perfect. I've been using one of those little tripods made by Jetboil on my stoves since I got the Jetboil about 10, 15 years ago. One of the first Jetboils, I think it was, or the first Flash anyway. But since finding these, it's been a game changer. They weigh nothing. Literally, they weigh not even half as much as the Jetboil tripod. They pack down even smaller. You could get probably 3 lots of these for the same size as the Jetboil. They'll fit in any pot. They'll fit pretty much anywhere. They do magnet to each other. You can always just leave them one here if you want for some reason. I don't know why you'd ever want to do that. But really, really cool piece of gear. Like, genuinely, if you can get these, if you can buy these on AliExpress, just get them. Like, they cost next to nothing. And for me, they are a massive game changer. They keep the gas can really, really super stable. Keep it off the ground, so you've got an air barrier. So if you've got cold, you won't get that cold transfer, which is super nice. And it just works really, really well. So all in, you can pop these off. Pop your BRS off your gas cylinder like that. And then that goes in there, and you can fold this away like so. A little bit fiddly, but there we go. That goes in. Oh, it would go in there if I'd done that right. That goes in there, and then this is the size. That just goes in. Close the lid. I could probably get that in a bit better. Anyway, perfect little cook system. And the final option I have is this one. And this looks pretty weird. This is a strange thing. So this is actually 2 pieces of gear. So this is an Epigas micro stove, a vintage piece of gear also made by Epigas, a slightly more modern style burner. No windshield on this one, with 3 nice, I'll probably pull it down a bit, 3 nice large pot supports when compared with the BRS. So this will take a larger pot, which is something what's going on here? Hello. Too quite like. We'll take a larger pot. But this is the Ortic Alpine windshield. So this is a cool piece of gear. I didn't really know anything about Ortic. I didn't know who they were. But I picked this up recently pretty cheaply, as I always do. But this allows you to hang your stove for alpine use, which I do like. And it also acts as a windshield. It's made of a fireproof canvasy material. So this will fit your little on top stove in here, and then you can just pop your pots straight in like that. And it acts as a windshield or a nice wind barrier. So this can be used as is without this here, so you don't have to suspend it. You can just use it as is like that, or of course you can suspend it. If you do choose to suspend it, there is actually an additional layer you can pull up. So for super, super windy or cold temperatures, you can pull the extra layer, extends the windshield, which I really do like. And it does actually say you can use this as a field oven by closing it up, almost sealing the top like that. You can utilize it as a form of oven. I haven't actually tried that yet, so I can't speak to how well that actually works. But yeah, super, really, really nice piece of gear. If I can just take the stove out of here, should probably have done this a bit differently, but oh well. Okay, that's not going to work. So we'll take that off there. We'll look at the stove quickly. So this is the Epigas Micro. So if you're looking for a relatively reliable but also fairly budget-friendly backpacking stove, this is a good option. Of course, it's not one of the most popular by any means by today's standards. It's a very, very old piece of gear. I think this is probably from the early 90s, possibly late 80s. Again, one of the first companies to utilize the resealable gas cartridge, but I really, really do like the stove. Super easy, super reliable. This thing operates really, really well. You can again use it in conjunction with a Tokes pot, but I like it because you can utilize larger cookware. So if you're cooking for 2 people, which I will say the BRS 3000 is not ideal for, because I don't want to be putting anything larger than a 500ml pot on there. This is a better alternative. It's obviously a lot heavier. It's a bigger, more, well, you know, heavier piece of gear. It's brass regulator underneath this plastic housing, and the rest of it is stainless steel. But it does have 3 nice wide pot supports. It's very, very stable. And personally, I don't think it folds down super small. Slightly bigger than an MSR pocket rocket, I would say. But it's just a really nice piece of gear. And these things can be picked up pretty cheap for about £15. I think I paid £15 for this one in near new condition. So it's the Epigas 3140HP micro stove. Again, made in England. Really, really nice piece of vintage gear. I will say, if you can pick up an Epigas stove for a good price, I am very, very happy with their performance, very, very happy with their build quality. Although they're on the older and slightly heavier side, you do get the reliability there. You know, I've had no concerns with how these are performed in the wind, had no issues with operating them in cold or wet weather. So in comparison with a lot of the Chinese-made, you know, stoves you can pick up now, if you're looking to get a cheap stove, try to find a cheap Epigas stove, because although you're going to be carrying slightly more in terms of weight, you'll get the performance, you'll get the longevity. This thing's over 30 years old and it performs just as well as it did when it was new. And you can literally take these things apart and reassemble them really, really easily. So parts are not an issue for these. And they do take a generic type of burner jet. So you can take the burner head off, the pot stand off, the plastic shield comes off, and you can see it's just a brass regulator with a generic jet head in there, which you can remove and clean if you would like to. So yeah, that was a brief look at some of my favourite backpacking stoves for 2024, although most of them, or some of them, are a lot older than that. But I hope you found that useful, and if there's anything you want me to make a video on, anything you want me to touch on, go into more information about, just drop a comment below and I'll be more than happy to oblige. Take care guys, stay safe out there, and see you soon.